Hey, what is happening? So today what I want to talk about is one feature that is being offered by Cribble. So Cribble out of the box offers a feature like you can route traffic. You can route your logs based on your IP addresses, right? So by IP addresses I mean whether it's a public IP address or a private IP address, you can route traffic to different locations, different indexes, however you want to do it, right? So this is a feature that is actually possible in Splunk, right? There is no actual documentation for this existing, but then I thought I'll just make a video on this and I'll show you how you can do the same thing with Splunk. So this is something that Cribble does through the GUI, right? But we can do the same thing with underscore routing in Splunk, right? So this is the log that we are going to work with, right? So this is like 1,000 lines of apache log that was generated using a log generator program. So this log has both public IP addresses, both private IP addresses like you see here, and public IP addresses, right? So my use case is if it is a public IP address, I want to route it to a different index, and if it is a private IP address, I want to route it to a different index, right? So this is especially useful if let's say you have a test box, right? Or you have any kind of a server, and then you are only interested in traffic that is coming from outside, and you are not worried about traffic that is coming from inside your network for whatever the use case may be, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't monitor your traffic coming from inside. I'm just saying this is a hypothetical use case. It can be whatever you need it to be, right? Or let's say you have a use case where you are not really you don't really want to retain your logs from your private IP addresses for let's say 1 year. You just want to keep it for 6 months, or you want to create better dashboards, right? So whatever the case may be, so I'm going to show you how you can actually route your traffic, right, from based on the fact that whether it is a public IP or whether it's a private IP, right? So I have a server running here, right? This is a test box that I have. It's running on a T2 micro, so it is a bit slow, right? So the first thing that we have to do is this concept called underscore TCP routing in Splunk. It is already built in, right? So the way you start this exercise is first you get a copy of your, or first you get a small sample of your log that is coming in. So let's say this is the sample of the log, right? You can either take it from Splunk itself. You go to Splunk, you change that search to underscore raw, and then you get the copy of the data that is coming in. Or if you're monitoring the file, just copy like a few lines from this file. So I made a dump of this. This thing has like 1,000 lines, right? So I'm going to put this on regex 101, right? So be careful what you're putting on regex 101. This is a public website, right? And you can't just put content in there, especially if you have private, especially if you have sensitive data, right? So you can sanitize your data and then you can put in your log here, right? So this is just for your information, right? So we have some logs from put into regex 101, right? So now there's a filter that I got from the internet and then I customized, right? So this is the filter. So I created a medium document which explains what this filter is all about, right? So this is the filter that we are going to use, right? So the whole filter is in the medium document that is on the description, right? You just paste in this medium document and then you can actually see this is actually matching all your private IP addresses, right? You see all your private IP addresses getting matched. So if you keep going down, you can actually see the private IP addresses getting matched, right? See, the private IP address got matched, right? So now what you have to do is you have to determine in your environment, do you have 127.0.0 range IP address? If you don't have it, you can remove it, right? The way you remove it is you remove it from the pipe, there are pipes here, so you can just select and remove. So if you don't have 172.IP range, you can select from the pipe, right? You can go to the pipe and then delete it from pipe to pipe, right? So if you don't have one, you can delete. If you don't have two, you can delete. You can delete however you want it to be, and you can customize the filter the way you want, right? So this is just like an example on how to write this filter, right? But the basic principle remains the same. You can leave whatever the you can leave like whatever filter you want, and you can delete everything that is remaining, right? All you have to do is, so let's say you don't have 192 range IP as your private IP. All you have to do is delete the whole pipe, right? I'll explain more in the medium document so you can actually understand it better, right? So anyway, so we have the filter put in, and we have the so we made sure that it is matching on regex or not, right? So another thing that I want to speak about is this filter is set so that if you are familiar with regex, you know that the regex is expecting the IP address to be at the start of the line. That is the character that is shown here, right? So if your IP address is somewhere else on the log, just edit this regex in such a way that the IP address is pointed correctly, right? So anyway, so we have the base regex written, right? So the next thing that we have to do is we log into Splunk, right? So I already have a Splunk apache installed, right? So now the next thing I have to do is I have to create two files, right? So the one is I'm going to a local folder, right? And inside there is props and transforms, right? So I'm going to onboard the data as a specific source type, right? So the source type is, so let me just quickly check default and props. So the source type that I want to onboard the data in as is Apache access combined. So because this is the log that you saw on screen is actually an access combined log, right? So I'm going to onboard the data as Apache access combined, right? So now next thing what I'm going to do is, let me just zoom in so that you can see better. So next thing that we are going to do is I'm going to copy this, right? And then I'm going to go into props, right? And then I'm going to create the transforms reference inside the props, right? So this is how you do it. So everything that you see here is explained on the medium document, right? So Apache access combined, I'm referring that source type, and then I'm referring to this transforms, right? So I created that, right? And now next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going into the transforms file, right? And then I'm going to create I'm going to paste in this, right? So this is the regex that you saw earlier. So the same regex it is in the medium document, so you can just copy paste it from there. So this is the important part where the magic is happening, right? So you have the metadata key, and then it is for index, right? And format is Apache private. So basically that means everything that is matching this regex, everything that is matching on this pattern, this is for the destination. This key is index, and then you have to route it to Apache private, right? So this is how the transforms file is written. Fine. So we have that, right? And then let's go to Splunk, okay, and then settings and add data, right? So this is an all-in-one box, and just for the sake of convenience, I'm going to onboard the data through the upload option. Even if you put in through the universal forwarder, let's say you're onboarding this data from your universal forwarder, you all you have to do is specify this source type on the universal forwarder, specify this source type on the universal forwarder, which is the your source type, this source type, and then you put this transforms file and the props file on your heavy forwarder, if you have a heavy forwarder in between. Remember in the last video I told you where the index time extraction happens. So it is at the first full Splunk enterprise that the data sees. So if you have a heavy, it happens at the heavy. If you don't have a heavy, you're sending straight to indexer, it happens at the indexer, right? So anyway, you create it wherever depending on your environment, you create it at the right location, right? Fine. So for our environment, we created it on the searcher itself because it's all in one, right? So I'm going to restart, because a restart is required for all index time extraction changes, right? So Splunk is restarting now. In the meantime, what we can do is let's talk about something else. So if you're trying to do this, always remember you are adding more computation to your heavy forwarder, right? By adding more computation, your heavy forwarder, if it doesn't have enough resources, it is going to choke, right? And if it chokes, what is going to happen is your input queue is going to have backlogs. That means your ingest is going to get slow, and your network, your data ingest will slow down, right? So always follow the Splunk recommended heavy forwarder server configuration, right? You have to follow the recommended, or you have to like create something above the recommendation, right? So even if you put in fancy field extractions, it doesn't matter. And you have to keep an eye on your data, because if the amount of data that is coming in is very high and your processing power is low, you're going to have issues with field extraction. So let me just go back to regex 101. So regex 101 actually have one feature called, it will actually tell you the time it took for running this step, right? So this is like how much time it took for finding the pattern. So 1,000 lines of pattern, it took like 254 millisecond, right? So it's not exactly accurate, but you will get a ballpark number on how much time it will take for this regex to run, right? And don't just paste in the whole regex pattern just because I put in there, right? If you are not expecting any data, right, just if you're not expecting any data from these private IPs, just leave it, right? Just delete it off, right? So fine. So we have that. Now the server should have restarted now, right? And the server have restarted. So we can see the server restarted. Now let's go to the server and let's log in, right? I'm going to upload the file. Right. So let's upload this file. So the principle is the same, even if you are sending it through the UF, it works the same, right? So we are uploading the log, right? Only thing that I have to keep in mind is I have to set it to the Apache access command, because that is the source type that we had defined earlier, right? And I'm going to send it to Apache. The index name is just Apache, right? And then I'm going to onboard the data. So let's see what happened. So this is 1,000 lines of logs. So now let's see how the routing happened here. So 793 lines of logs ended up in index is equal to Apache, right? So all these IP addresses that you see here are like public IPs. You don't see any private IPs here, right? Everything that you see here is public, right? And then if you go to index is equal to so if you go to index is equal to Apache hyphen private, Apache underscore private, right? And if you, let's say we run it, so we had 207 lines of log, which is all private and no public, right? So this is all private and no public. So once I have my data here, right, I can go to settings, I can change the retention to whatever I want, right? So let's say my use case is public apache index for the public IPs I want only for 1 year, and private IPs I only for 1 year, for like 6 months. So I can change the retention to however I want to set it, right? So anyway, so that is how we do it, but always keep in mind, this is a resource intensive exercise. Your heavy forwarder needs to be following the Splunk recommended standards. If you only have very small, like limited hardware for your heavy forwarder, or your indexer is very busy, because we will measure the heavy forwarder's performance before we implement the change, right? So that way your heavy forwarder would not choke and your input pipelines will not get stuck. Alright, so only consider this video as a guide, so that we just know that the same capability that Cribble is offering, Splunk is offering as well, but you have to do this through your command line, right? So let's say instead of this, you want to your use case is like you want to send this data to the null queue, right? So instead of routing it to your hardware, whatever you would like to do, that option is available, right? So yeah, that is all we have for now. I'll leave the link to the median document, so you can take the regex pattern from there. All right, and we will speak again later. Thanks.